Well, some of you know I'm a UCLA grad, which I'm super proud of, going to the University of California, Los Angeles. As an alma mater, it says, I love the official seal of UCLA. I don't know if you know, but it's like a Bible opened up with a ribbon that says, "Let there be light." And as a brand new Christian, I was super pumped about that. I mean, the seal was adopted back in 1910. I'm like, that's what we're here for. Let there be light. What's so sad is now the university then and now is just clouded in secular darkness. I mean, it's just chilling. They got the right seal, but they don't have the right spirit. A place that should be filled with wisdom is filled with ignorance and ineptness and foolishness. Here at a university that should be a place of insight is known for dimness, obscurity, and in my opinion, kind of a lot of stupidity. I don't want to be disrespectful. There's lots of great things about UCLA, but this should be a place where there's clarity, and in a place where there's supposed to be clarity, we have cloudiness, confusion, and a lot of chaos. And it's super sad. Today we'll be in Genesis, and we're going to get the clarity that we actually need. Like, how did we get here, and who are we, and who made all this stuff? But UCLA is a little confused. Man is not a random collection of molecules. Man is not some primitive, noble savage. Man is not an evolved animal of chance. He's a dignified, majestic image bearer, imaging God. He's a steward of the earth, an earth that we're going to see today in creation that was created especially for man and woman. And he's a ruler of creation. And man is supposed to be a benevolent king and with a queen. And we're supposed to govern this habitat, this home that God's created in a way that's super beautiful and wonderful. Anyways, we're in Genesis chapter 1. Let's read our text today. We're starting in verse 3. Now, we've taken a couple weeks. I did one verse one week and one verse the other week. So I've been told I need to pick it up. So, you're going to have to go quicker. So, we're in verse 3 of Genesis 1. We're going to go all the way to verse 19. How's that? We're going to cover it. So, let's read it, and then we'll unpack it. Here we go. These are the first 4 days of creation. It says this, "And God said, 'Let there be light.' There was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And God said, 'Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water.' So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it, and it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day. And God said, 'Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let the dry ground appear.' And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And then God said, 'Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit which with seed in it, according to their various kinds.' And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, 'Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs, to mark sacred times and days and years, and let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth.' And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day." So there you go. 4 days we're going to cover today. UCLA got the right words, they just didn't get the right walk. They quote the right God, but they think they're gods themselves, so it's super confusing. But here we have Scripture, and Scripture gives us stuff that's so basic and so elementary. I don't know how the world's kind of gotten off course, but something just as basic as we have a 7-day week, that's from God. There's nowhere in ancient antiquity that any religious writings or philosophical writings has a 7-day week. Only the Bible does. This is ours. That's how basic, how we got on that rhythm, because God created that rhythm. That's His doing. So we're going to see these first 4 days of creation where that formless, empty darkness that was there in the beginning all of a sudden takes form and fullness and light. The universe is no longer chaos. It actually takes shape. The basic elements of the physical universe are starting to get energized, if you will, and activated. Structure and texture and color and life start to emerge as God creates the world, not by chance. He created it by intelligent design. He is very smart, personal, divine design. Now, as we get into these days, we're going to see 7 of them. We'll do 4 of them today. Some people are like, are these literal days? Yes, they're literal days. Could they be like ages, like each day represents an age? Because doesn't 2 Peter say that one day is like 1,000 years to God? Well, to God, He doesn't live in time, so yes, but that's not what I see here in the text. I'm not a scientist, I'm a theologian. And the scriptures are very, very clear that the order of creation here listed in Genesis seems to be different from the order of the fossil record. The fossil record that we have that people want to use to date things obviously includes a great reign of death and disease and destruction because fossils are dead. Well, we don't have anything dead, according to Scripture, until Adam sins and death actually enters. We're not there yet. So the aging system that the world has, I just don't see it in Scripture. That's not there. We don't have a sadistic God who creates death and craziness. So I see these as literal days. The actual wording Moses used is actual, literal. There were a lot of different Hebrew words he could have used if he wanted to imply ages or something more elastic, or why didn't you use these other Hebrew words? He didn't use them because I think they are literal days with literal events. So some people say, well, that's how you interpret it. And it's like, there's no interpretation needed. I mean, if you want to change the word days to mean something other than 24 hours, you have the burden on you to tell me how you got that interpretation. I don't have that burden. It's days. It appears over 100 times in the Old Testament. It always means days. It always talks about 24 hours. 4 times we're going to see in today's passage it says evening, day, 24-hour day. So I don't know. You can go with something else. I'm not that smart, but it looks like literal days. So we're going to look at 4 literal days. And day 1, we see in verse 3, it says, and God said. Now, this is super important because this is going to appear 10 times. God said, boom. God said, boom. God said. He creates with His word. He doesn't have to do anything special other than speak. We see this here in verse 3, 6, 9, 11, 14, 20, 24, 26, 28, 29. He said, there was. Let there be light, and boom, there was light. Light was. Light appeared. Light flashed. Now, this is not the sunlight. I don't know, this could be the light of God. It could be just light, some luminosity that He creates. He hasn't created the sun yet, so that's not the only beacon of illumination. God Himself is light, so He doesn't really need the sun. We already saw with the Israelites, He created the cloud by day and the fire by night. There's a lot of ways God can create light. Doesn't go on and say here, but He creates light, and it is alive. This electromagnetic system of lighting, whether it's infrared or X-ray or visible light or ultraviolet light, it's created. It's created. Now, this is also the first record, if you will, of God actually speaking in Scripture. So that's interesting because when he speaks, it happens, which is super cool. And when Jerome comes up, it's going to happen too. Can I just take you with me wherever you... I had a basketball game last night down in Riverside, and my car died on me. I was by Azusa off the 210 freeway, so I called my partner. He came and picked me up, but my car's still in Azusa, so I guess I'll deal with it. I just needed Jerome. I should have called you last night. My car is like going, I need a new battery or something. Anyways, this is the first time that God actually speaks. Thank you, Jerome. And you can see just from speaking alone, just from his will alone, things exist. Super powerful. Some people say, well, the Father is the source of all things, verse 1. The Spirit is the energizer of all things, verse 2. Now the Word is the revealer of all things, verse 3, because Jesus is the living Word. He's the light of the world. In him there's no darkness, 1 John 1. So there is this Trinitarian movement of creation going on, which is super cool. Verse 4. And God saw that the light was good. It was beautiful. He was pleased with it, if you will. Creation is good. Order is good. Light is good. Our optimism that he's creating a universe or a planet that we can exist on is good. Good appears multiple times. Verse 10, verse 12, 17, 21, 25, 31. He's going to keep saying everything he creates is good until he creates man. And then he's going to say, this is not good. Oops. Because he's not done. It's not good for man to be alone, right? So we'll talk about that when we get to man. But today we're not there. That's day 6. We're on day 1 and 2. So anyways, God sees the light as good. He separated and divided the light from the darkness. This is super important for our 21st century mind today because God makes distinctions. This is part of creation here. He's separating the light from the darkness. He doesn't eliminate the darkness. He doesn't go away with it, but he separates it and he divides it, if you will. He makes distinctions, if you will, between the light and the darkness. He's going to make distinctions all throughout creation. And it's going to be distinctions between good and evil and what a man is and what a woman is. I don't know how that got so confusing today, but they're super distinct to God. And he works super hard in creation to name things, to be clear, to let you know that a man is not an animal. Thank you, Darwin. But they're not. We're not the same. But today, one of the goals of secularist, humanist, godless people who reject God is to blur distinctions. That's one of their primary tactics right now. Blur nations, open borders, blur genders, sexuality, make everything fluid, like everything just tossed salad. And they're doing a great job. But for those of us who are binary, those of us who think evil and good are not the same thing, that men and women are not the same thing, that there's different categories, we're trying to do what we thought was super obvious here, but has gotten confusing. Anyways, verse 5, God called the light, the yom, day, and the darkness he called night. Notice he's defining his terms here. And there was evening, and there was morning. This is now going to be a formula. There was evening, there was morning, the first day. In other words, evening passed, morning came, first day. Evening gave way to the morning, first day. Together they formed the first day. He's going to repeat that each day, just so we don't get confused. This cyclical succession of days and nights, these periods of light and darkness, this arrangement reminds us that this is a normal solar day. So here we go. By the way, I might just mention here, for those of you who have some Jewish background, you know your Old Testament, remember, this says the evening gives way to the morning, and of course we, moderners, usually think of a day starting in the morning. Today is Sunday, it starts in the morning and goes to the evening. But if you know the Jewish mindset, right, the day starts at sundown. So when they had like their Sabbath, Friday night, when the sun went down, not midnight, when the sun set, the Sabbath on Saturday starts in the evening and goes to the day. So this is lined up with kind of the Jewish way of thinking. Moses is the author here. He's just letting you know we start with the night and go to the day. That's why you're seeing that order here. Another thing that's kind of implied here, but is that God works during the day. He does not work at night. There is something that moderners don't have this mentality because we have lights and electricity and 24/7 open Walmarts and, you know, though since COVID, they've actually reduced some of the hours. But do you remember back in the day, like, it's 3 a.m., let's go. Let's go where? Target. I'm like, who? But things just got crazy. This kind of shows that it's interesting. God doesn't work at night, apparently, only during the day. And he's actually going to take a day off as a model for us. Not that he needs it. He's not tired. But we'll talk about the Sabbath when we get there. So the presence of light, I think, does imply force and energy coming to the universe. The electromagnetic field, the gravitational forces, the nuclear forces are all activated. I have read a lot this last week that some people think, well, the nuclear forces were maintained and the integrity of matter came from the Father who created the space, mass, time continuum. The gravitational forces, those are activated by the Spirit who gave form and motion to these initially formless matters. That's cool. And Jesus, well, the electromagnetic forces are activated by the Word of Jesus and to exist. Okay, I'm not smart enough for that. I don't know. All I know is that the universe is getting formed, structured, activated. The Father's there, the Spirit's there, the Son is there. It's really cool. And what's super cool is he's creating it for you. He's creating a universe and a planet that only human beings could live on. Just for you. With an atmosphere and oxygen and air and everything that you would need. And even though there's other planets like Jupiter and Venus and stuff, you couldn't live there. This is the record of what he's doing for you and me, the home he's creating for us, which is super cool. So now as we go into day 2, you're going to see he's going to create this atmosphere, this oxygen atmosphere, and this hydrosphere, if you will, of liquid water, which mankind needs in order to exist. He's going to create air, basically, right? Verse 6. And God said, let there be a vault, an expanse, could be translated a firmament, a spread out thinness, if you will. It could be translated an atmosphere, maybe in our language a space, rakia. Let there be kind of space between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the vault, verse 7, or the sky, if you will, or the air, and separated. He makes a distinction again here, the water under the vault from the water that's above the vault. So he's going to do some separating here. The lower waters would include things that will become like seas and lakes and rivers, if you will, that H2O kind of base for living. And the waters above would be apparently like this blanket of watery vapor that was apparently around the earth that allowed it to have kind of a greenhouse, static kind of very healthy environment that protected the earth from ultraviolet rays and stuff like that. So whatever he's doing, he's creating this home that is got distinctions that allows mankind to live. And he says, and it was so. You know, he said it, it happened. Verse 8, and God called that vault above, that expanse, if you will, sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, Jewish order, the second day. So here we kind of have the Goldilocks story, right? You know, remember, isn't Goldilocks like it's too big, too small, like just right, too hot, too cold? No, it's just right. God creates an environment a planet, and he's creating distinctions on the planet that are just perfect for mankind. Has this super kind of water features, oxygen features, on a beautiful sphere at the right place in the universe. He's doing something super marvelous here. So the Earth is, exactly the distance it needs to be from the sun, lest we burn up or freeze. It's got the right atmosphere. It's got the substance of liquid water. It's got all the conditions for us to be here. I think scientists, I was reading, says it's an anthropic principle. There you go. It's not a theological term, but it's made for man. Apparently it works for man, right? Anyways, and God said, let the water under the sky or below the heavens be gathered into one place, namely the oceans, and let the dry ground emerge and appear. And it was so. I don't know if we have just one continent at this time, but God is now going to let kind of some land kind of emerge up and waters recede. Probably a little bit of mountains start to form and some of the depth of the ocean starts to appear. I don't know if it's one continent because it just refers to land. If it was one continent, then that continent would start to break up probably during the flood, which we'll get to in Genesis 6, because there's a catastrophic worldwide flood that does kind of shift some stuff, and I am told that continents did kind of break apart and do some stuff. So at this point, we definitely have the distinction between land and oceans or water. Verse 10, and God called this dry ground land, and he gathered waters, which he called seas, i.e. plural, and God saw that it was good. So whatever's happening here, minerals are forming, rocks are forming, the crust, the mantle, the core of the earth is forming. He's got a blanket of fertile soil that's emerging, the sand and the silt and the clay and the chemical nutrients and the soil moisture. All this stuff is happening here on this day to set up for a planet that God can use for mankind to actually live on and to thrive on. Verse 11, God continues, and he said, boom, and all he has to do is speak it. Let the land, or the earth, if you will, produce. It means sprout or burst forth. And he's going to list kind of three things here. Vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it. Vegetation would include like every sort of grass, if you will, and ground cover. Seed-bearing plants would include like herbs and bushes and shrubs. And trees on the land and bearing fruit with seed in it would be like all large woody plant timbers, all fruit-bearing trees and stuff. And each of them were created according to their various kinds. And it was so. I'm not a naturalist or anything, but I am told that these are like the three basic categories, even though we've got more sophisticated in categorizing plant life and stuff on the planet. These are the three like big categories. You have kind of the grasses and the vegetation, the ground covers. You've got like the plants and the shrubs and the herbs, and then you've kind of got the trees and the fruit plants. And so we see that here. What I think is most important for us theologically is that you see that everything that's created here is created full grown. He doesn't create seeds that over time develop. He creates a full-grown bush, full-grown grass, full-grown trees. He's going to, by the way, we're getting ahead of ourselves, going to create a full-grown man with a full-grown woman. It's going to be a full-grown planet. That's very important because today you can go to UCLA and they'll tell you, well, if you look at the number of years, it had to take billions of years for them to get to this place. But he already created it aged. Yeah, if we had no God and everything was just on a linear scale, maybe it would take that long, but he created it mature. Like on day one, it could have appeared like 1 billion years old. On day one, the tree could have appeared at like it's been there for 1,000 years. He created a mature oak. He didn't create a little acorn. So they go off on all these theories, but I'm like, read the text. They already are full, mature species. Anyways, I don't need to go off, right? I have issues. I'm working it out. Thank you for being patient with me. I'm like, that's not what it's okay, anyways. So I appreciate, right? I appreciate science. They're trying to put it together. That's great. But you also have to put it together with what we know to be true. And that is God didn't, your aging process doesn't work because God started with things aged. Adam already had the appearance of years on day one. So anyways. Verse 12, the land produced this vegetation, plants bearing seed, according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it, according to their kinds. I know today we have fancier terms for this that I'm not qualified to speak on, but apparently it's called like DNA molecules and genetic code. And, I don't know all the ways to actually say it, but there's a unique structure, whatever this theological term means, that they're according to their kinds. It just means this. Cats produce cats. That's it. Now, they could be different kinds of cats. Maybe over time horizontally there can be variation, but horses produce only horses, not monkeys or something else, right? So maybe the different kind of stallions and studs and steeds, and that's cool. Like variation is built in to the diversity of creation, but this text is very clear. It's only going to be according to their kind. And that's not only just biblical, that's scientific, because science has never shown something of one kind changing into something of another kind. Horses don't turn into mermaids or seahorses. Come on. I don't know. I don't want to get too crazy here, but just the evolutionary dogma of our day is so maddening. I'm with a lot of intelligent friends, but sometimes it's like, you're kidding. How do you think things that are completely unrelated, all of a sudden they have this common ancestry and common descent, and the pollywog became a fish, and the fish became an alligator, which became a monkey, and became no, we've never seen any of that. We've never seen any kind scientifically of any form turn into another kind. I mean, what a stretch. But then again, if you have no God and you're hostile to God, you have to live with something. You have to try to make sense of your life, so I guess they go with it. But here in Genesis, I just am so grateful that we have this book that's just sustained all these years. It's like, don't get crazy, people. Let me tell you the basics. Look, it doesn't tell you everything. It's not a science manual, but it is telling you everything's going to have a built-in, pre-programmed, multiplying, duplicating system in it to reproduce itself. So if you plant an apple tree, it automatically has seeds in it that will produce other apple trees on its own. And it's just built in. It's so cool. But you're never going to go out there and go, wow, we got pear trees now, apple trees, banana. I don't know, that tree just went crazy. No. So God saw that it was good. There was evening. Here we go, the same pattern. There was morning. The third day. Okay, so on the first day, God creates this energized entire universe. On the second day, he seems to create this kind of hydrosphere and atmosphere for the terrestrial sphere we're on. On the third day, there's this lithosphere and plant biosphere, if you will. Now I'm told in fancy language, day 4 is more about the astrosphere. And we have all of our astro experts here today with us, so that's super cool. So, verse 14 and says, God said, here he's going to just say it, and boom, it's going to happen. Let there be lights in the vault of the sky, in this expanse, if you will, of the heavens, to separate the day from the night. Distinctions again, and let them serve as signs to mark basic sacred times, or what we call seasons, and days and years. So God is giving us in the first few days of creation a pattern which we've kept ever since. And that is, you're going to have a 7-day week. And that's just because God set it up that way. No one else can claim that. No other religion, all my Buddhist friends, no, they have nothing. This is God's creation. It's 7 days, and it's ordered around all this creation. We have a 24-hour day based on the Earth's rotation on its 23-degree axis, which our scientists have helped us to figure out all the details, but it's already been written for in terms of God is the author of that. That's how you got a 24-hour day. How you got a year is the Earth actually travels what? One time around the thing he's going to talk about right here on day 4. Like, that's how you know it's a year. And he's already said here, I'm going to give these to you to mark out days and times and years. It's like, this is just so basic and brilliant. He puts a clock in the cosmos so that you and I can mark time and kairos and seasons and chronology and stuff. It's just super cool. So verse 15, let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. And notice he's like, this is to give lights to you and me. He's not just going to be like lighting an uninhabited planet. He's going to create you and me, and he wants us to have some light. It's awesome. And God made, verse 16, 2 great lights, 2 large luminaries, if you will. The greater, brighter light, which we call the sun, to govern or rule or to take charge of the day. And the lesser, smaller, if you will, dimmer light, namely the moon, to govern the night. So this is super cool because it's interesting here in Genesis, Moses doesn't name the sun or the moon. Why? Because pagans worship the sun and the moon. A lot of fake, false religious systems think they're deities. And Moses is like, I'm not even going to name them. I'm not even going to give that to you. We know that God is the creator of the greater light and the lesser light. Your sun and moon stuff, they're not God's. There's only one. So I think that's super cool in the text. Super savvy, very classy, not too in your face, but nonetheless, the sun and the moon get completely dethroned in Genesis, which I just love, right? That's super cool. So he says, yeah, I'm just going to go with the greater lights. Now, God has already created light. He did that on the first day. Now he's creating the light givers. In other words, he created the light, and now he's going to give you 2 generators that are going to like sustain the light. So light's intrinsic to God and his word, and now he's going to give us a generator, if you will, for those waves of light to continue on. So I don't know, I think it's super logical and biblical and super cool here. So the sun and the moon are both light givers. Obviously the sun actually generates light and the moon simply reflects light, but that's why Genesis says they're light givers. It doesn't say they both generate it. God is actually the ultimate generator. These are just 2 luminaries that he's going to use. So it's super, I don't know, I just think it's so classy how it's just said here. It's super good. And by the way, it's thrown in right. And oh, by the way, he also made stars, which is like, I love stars, it's like, by the way, he threw a lot of glitter in the sky too, little diamonds, just like you guys, he's creating this little home for you. He's going to make it super beautiful. You're going to love it, It's going to have the right atmosphere and the temperature, and it's going to be not too hot, not too cold, and it's like Goldilocks is going to be so happy. And, he's going to create these super beautiful luminaries for you. And by the way, he's going to throw just some pixie dust, around. And there's a lot of stars out there. We need to talk to our experts. But this week I was reading how many, I guess scientists say there's 100 billion stars in the Milky Way alone. And then I wrote a number of what they guess how many stars. It's like 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, like, what is that? A trillion, zillion, billion, trillion? I don't know. There's a lot of stars. But I'm not a scientist. I'm a theologian. So I'm like, okay. Psalm 147:4 says, God determines the number of stars. And this blows me away. And he gives to all of them their names. So he's creating a home for you that's going to be illuminated and beautiful with fresh air, fresh water, beautiful land and vegetation, flowers, all kinds of stuff. He's going to throw a bunch of stars out there. There's zillions of them, trillions, zillions, quadrillions, I don't know what the word is. But he knows them all. And he names them all. Like, he's not like, they may be like grains of sand to us, but they're all personalized to him. And these stars, by the way, many of them they're bigger than the earth. Some of them are bigger than the sun. I mean, these are huge entities, but they're not as important as the earth, because the earth has a complexity and a organization. And it's the home of his image bearers. So he just says, and by the way, he made stars. It's like, which are awesome, but that's all they get. Just honorable mention here. Verse 17, our final few verses. And God said, set them in the vault of the sky. He, in other words, just placed them to give light on the earth, to us, of course, to govern the day and the night. This is the sun and the moon, and to separate or divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. It was just awesome. He was pleased. And there was evening, and there was morning. In other words, evening passed, morning came. It all happened as it did before on the fourth day. So we've gotten through the first 4 days of creation. There's so much here. It's hard to unpack it all. But I know this. Look, UCLA has the right seal with the right words. They quote God, let there be light, but they don't get it. We all need light to do well. Physical light, but we need illumination. We need insight, particularly in the days we're living, days that are dark and confusing, and things are not distinct. They're fluid and crazy and meshed and hodgepodged. And God says, that's not how I created it. I created it so there wouldn't be any confusion. And if there was chaos, you're going to see each day I started to create an ordered universe, an ordered home for you that was distinct, so that you knew light was different from day, land is different than seas, good is different than evil, men are different from women, human beings are different from animals, and they're distinct. And it's honoring to God to do that. He's created a habitat and a home that's perfect for us. And I love science and reading about all the stuff we're discovering, but we're only discovering what God's already said here in Genesis. In other words, we're illuminating and adding texture and variegation and layers to what's already here, but you're not going to find something different. The world didn't come around by chance. It was created by God. How did he do it? He just said it. Just spoke it. That's how powerful his word is. Let there be light. There's light. And he did it for us. His word's that powerful. And each week we come to hear his word because it doesn't return void. It's like, Lord, get your word in us. And may it illuminate our hearts. And this is what the New Testament talks about, that our spirit would be enlightened. That we'd see clearly when the world tries to make things not very clear. And more practically, he gives us answers to things that we need answers to, and clarity when we need clarity. He doesn't want you to live confused and chaotic. So I think he does a good job. So we got through the first 4 days. What do you think? Thank you, Lord. You're awesome. Did you like the dethroning of the sun and the moon?
Yes.
We're not even going to mention you because you're not deities. The greater light and the lesser light. That's so awesome. Anyway.